Ethan Walker had never been to this side of the galaxy before. The alien world of Ziller was a place of strange skies, glowing rivers, and tall silver trees that whispered in the wind. He had been sent here by the United Human Alliance as part of a peace agreement with the Zillalari. Their population had fallen dangerously low after decades of war and disease, and now they were asking for help. He had been told very little before landing, just that the Council of Zaylar wanted to meet him in person. When he stepped into the Grand Hall, all eyes turned to him. The ceiling was covered in moving lights, like stars drifting in slow motion. At the far end, 7 alien council members sat on high seats, their faces calm but unreadable. In the center of the hall stood 2 women. They were sisters, both tall, graceful, and unlike any human woman Ethan had ever seen. Their skin had a faint silver blue shimmer under the light. Their hair was long and flowing, one with the color of midnight, the other with the pale glow of moonlight. They didn't look afraid, but their eyes held something deeper, a quiet sadness. The head counselor rose. "Human," he said, his voice echoing through the hall. "Our people are dying. We have but a few years before we are lost forever. We need your kind to help us repopulate our race. You have been chosen for this task. Before you stand the last 2 daughters of the House of Kilira, you must choose one to join you, and together you will ensure our bloodline survives." Ethan blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. "Choose one?" He repeated slowly. "Yes," the counselor replied. "Only one. The other will be taken to a place where she can live out her days in peace. But she will bear no children. She will not be part of the rebuilding of our people." The words hung in the air like a heavy chain. Ethan's gaze shifted between the 2 sisters. The one with midnight hair stood tall and steady, meeting his eyes without flinching. The one with moonlight hair lowered her gaze, but her hands clenched slightly. Neither spoke, but he could feel the tension between them. They were not enemies, yet the choice would tear them apart forever. The council gave him 3 days to decide. He would spend time with each sister, learn their ways, and then make his choice. As the meeting ended, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more behind this offer. The sisters walked out side by side, silent but connected. He noticed how their steps matched, how they moved like 2 halves of one whole. This wasn't just about survival. It felt like he was stepping into the middle of something much bigger. Later that evening, Ethan was shown to his guest room in the palace. It had tall windows that looked over the glowing forest. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw their faces, 2 lives, 2 futures, and a choice that could destroy one of them. He wasn't sure he had the right to decide, but the council had made it clear. The decision would be his, and his alone. The next morning, he met the midnight-haired sister. Her name was Vera. She led him through the training grounds where the Zillalari warriors once prepared for battle. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of pride when she spoke of her people's history. "You will not find weakness in me," she said, looking straight into his eyes. "If you choose me, I will stand by you in strength. I will fight for our people, but I will never beg for the place that should be mine." That night, he met the moonlight-haired sister. Her name was Lyra. She brought him to the gardens, where crystal flowers glowed in the dark. She spoke softly, telling him about the traditions, the songs, and the stories of their people. When she laughed, it was gentle, like a stream running over smooth stones. But when she spoke of the future, her voice trembled just enough for Ethan to notice. "If you choose me, I will make a home for our children," she said. "I will teach them to honor both your people and mine, but I will not ask you to choose me. That is your path to walk." By the end of the second day, Ethan's mind was no clearer. Both sisters were strong in their own way. Both carried the weight of their people's survival. But there was something else. A shadow in their eyes. It was as if they knew something he didn't. Something that made this choice more dangerous than anyone had told him. That night, as he lay in bed, he heard faint voices through the wall. It was the sisters, speaking in low tones. He couldn't make out all the words, but he caught one sentence. From Vera, they will take the one he does not choose, and she will never return. Ethan froze. The truth was becoming clear. This wasn't just a choice about the future. It was a choice between saving one life or losing both forever, and in that moment, a thought came to him. What if he refused to choose at all? Asterisk, the council had given Ethan one more day before the final decision. But instead of making things easier, every passing moment made the choice harder. He was supposed to spend the day with each sister again, learn more about them, and decide. Yet the truth he had overheard last night kept echoing in his mind. They will take the one he does not choose, and she will never return. In the morning, he found Vera waiting for him at the palace steps. She wore a fitted black tunic, the mark of a warrior. Her eyes were sharp, scanning every shadow as if expecting danger. We're leaving the city. Walls today, she said. I want you to see the wild lands, if you are to be one of us. You must understand where our strength comes from. The wild lands stretched for miles beyond the city. Fields of glowing grass swayed under a pale blue sun. Strange creatures moved in the distance, some with feathered bodies and glass-like eyes. As they walked, Vera told him about the border wars, how she had fought to protect the younger ones, while her own parents died defending the capital. She didn't speak with sadness, she spoke with fire. Every step, every word carried the weight of someone who refused to be broken. Ethan began to see a different side of her, not just the fierce warrior, but the sister who had shielded Lyra from the worst of the war. At one point, they came to a narrow cliff overlooking a roaring river. This is where I brought Lyra when the enemy breached the gates, Vera said quietly. I told her to jump if they came. I would rather she be swept away by the river than taken by them. Her voice caught for the first time. It was only a second, but Ethan saw the pain behind her steel. By midday, they returned to the city. Vera left without saying goodbye. A habit of hers, perhaps because words were too heavy for her. Waiting for him near the palace garden gates was Lyra. She wore a soft green dress that shimmered like the leaves around her. Her hands held a small woven basket filled with glowing fruits. I thought we could walk the quiet paths, she said with a small smile. The garden was unlike anything had seen. Trees grew in spirals, their roots forming natural archways. The air was sweet with the scent of the crystal flowers. Lyra moved slowly, touching each plant with care. She told him the names of every flower, every tree, and the stories tied to them. When they reached a pond with silver water, she sat by the edge and looked at her reflection. When we were children, our mother brought us here, she said. Softly, she told us that no matter what the world takes from us, we must always protect each other. Ethan noticed how different she was from Vera. Where Vera's strength was like a blade, Lyra's was like water, gentle, but able to wear down stone. They sat for hours, talking about human traditions and Xylari customs. When Ethan mentioned Earth's oceans, Lyra's eyes lit up. I want to see them one day, she said. I want to stand where the sky touches the water. As the sun began to set, they heard footsteps behind them. It was Vera. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes flickered between Ethan and Lyra. You should return, she said curtly. The council doesn't like when humans wander too far from the palace before the choosing. On the walk back, Ethan noticed something strange. Even though Vera spoke little and Lyra spoke softly, they walked in sync. They didn't argue, didn't compete for his attention. Instead, there was an unspoken connection between them, a bond so deep that even this cruel tradition couldn't erase it. That night, unable to sleep again, Ethan decided to walk the empty palace corridors. He turned a corner and stopped when he saw the sisters together in a quiet chamber. They were sitting close, their foreheads touching, speaking in whispers. He couldn't hear the words, but he saw Lyra's tears and Vera's hand holding hers tightly. It wasn't the sight of two rivals waiting for one to be chosen. It was the sight of two people holding on to the only family they had left. When they noticed him, they both fell silent. Vera rose first, her tone guarded. "You should not be here." But Ethan didn't back away. "I know what the council will do to the one I don't choose," he said quietly. "Don't bother denying it." Neither sister spoke, but their silence was answer enough. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I don't want to lose either of you. I don't care what tradition says. I will find a way." Vera's eyes narrowed, testing his resolve. Lyra's lips parted as if to warn him. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If you defy the council, you won't just lose us. You might lose your life." Ethan straightened. "Then I guess I'll have to risk it." For the first time, Vera's expression softened, and for the first time, Lyra's fear seemed to ease. It was in that moment Ethan realized something important. This wasn't just about saving one sister or the other. It was about saving them both. Because if one was lost, the other would never truly live again. The next morning, the palace felt different. The air seemed heavier. The guards at the gates more watchful. Ethan could sense something was moving behind the scenes. Something the council didn't want him to see. Breakfast was brought to his room, but he noticed it came later than usual. When the servant set down the tray, Ethan asked casually, "Has the council been meeting early?" The servant's eyes flickered nervously. "I wouldn't know, human," she replied before hurrying away. Ethan's instincts told him he was running out of time. If he didn't uncover the truth before the final ceremony tomorrow, he would be walking blind into the council's trap. He decided to search for answers the only way he could, by speaking directly to the sisters without the council's ears nearby. When he found Vera in the training yard, she was striking a heavy target with a long staff, each blow precise and powerful. "You're early," she said without looking at him. "I couldn't sleep," he replied. "I need to know everything." "The council isn't telling me." Vera paused, resting the staff against her shoulder. "There are many things the council doesn't tell outsiders," she said carefully. "But some secrets aren't mine to share." "Then whose are they?" Ethan pressed. Vera's jaw tightened. "Lyra will tell you, if she chooses to, but understand this. Human, knowing the truth might make your choice harder, not easier." Later that day, Ethan found Lyra in the library. The room was enormous, filled with shelves of glowing scrolls and crystal tablets. She was reading alone near the window, sunlight catching in her silver hair. When she saw him, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're worried," she said softly. "I can feel it. I know the council will take the one I don't choose." Ethan said without wasting time, "I want to know why. Why not let both of you live freely? Why make me choose at all?" Lyra's fingers tightened around the scroll in her lap. "They don't want us both alive because we are the last of our family," she whispered. "The last of the royal bloodline." Ethan frowned. "Royal?" She nodded, her voice trembling. "Our parents were not just leaders. They were the last true rulers of Xyler. The council rose to power after they were killed in the war. If both of us remain, the people might demand the return of the monarchy." Ethan leaned forward. "So, this isn't about saving your people's future. It's about protecting the council's power." Lyra's eyes glistened. "They hide it under the excuse of tradition. One sister chosen, the other exiled. It has happened before. Many times they call it the choosing, but really, it is the council's culling." A sudden noise in the hallway made them both freeze. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming closer. Lyra quickly rolled up the scroll and shoved it into Ethan's hands. "Hide this," she whispered. "Do not let them see it." Ethan slipped the scroll into his jacket just as the door opened. Two guards stepped inside, their eyes sweeping the room. "The council requests your presence, human," one of them said. Ethan nodded, forcing a calm expression. "I'll be there shortly." When the guards left, Lyra touched his arm. "Be careful," she said quietly. "If they suspect you know too much, you might not leave this planet." The council chamber was colder than before. The head counselor smiled, but his eyes were sharp. "We trust your decision is becoming clear," he said. Tomorrow, at the ceremony, you will announce it before the people. Ethan forced a polite smile. Yes, I've been learning a lot. He glanced around at the other council members, wondering how many of them knew the full truth. Back in his room, Ethan unrolled the scroll Lyra had given him. It was a record of the royal family's lineage, going back centuries. The last entry was the names of Lyra and Vera, and next to them, in red ink, a mark Ethan recognized even without translation. It was the same symbol carved into the exile gates outside the city, the gates where the unchosen were sent. The truth hit him like a punch. The choosing wasn't just exile, it was a death sentence. Once sent beyond the gates, no one returned. The wild lands beyond were filled with creatures and storms that no one could survive. Ethan clenched the scroll. They had lied to him from the start. This wasn't about selecting a partner. It was about deciding which sister would live and which would die. That night, he made up his mind. He wasn't going to play their game. Tomorrow, in front of the entire city, he would make his own choice. Not the one they expected, not the one they would allow, but deep down he knew, if he defied them, he would make himself an enemy of the council. And enemies of the council did not live long. Asterisk. The day of the choosing came faster than Ethan expected. The palace was alive with movement. Guards in polished armor, banners fluttering in the alien wind. The entire city had gathered in the grand square outside the council hall. From the balcony where the decision would be announced, Ethan could see thousands of faces, some curious, some excited, others tense. The sisters stood on either side of him, Lyra in a flowing silver gown, her hair braided with crystal threads. Vera in a dark warrior's uniform, the blade of her sword gleaming under the pale sun. Neither looked at the other, but their shoulders almost touched, as if they drew quiet strength from being near. The head counselor stepped forward, raising his hand for silence. People of Xyler, his voice boomed. Today we witness the choosing. The human representative, Ethan Walker, will decide which daughter of the House of Kalira will join him. The chosen one will help rebuild our people's future. The other will be taken beyond the gates, as tradition demands. The crowd was silent, waiting. Ethan's hands curled into fists. He could still feel the scroll hidden under his coat, the proof of the council's lies. His heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He wasn't here to play their game. The counselor turned to him. Human, he said, his voice cold but polite. Step forward and speak your choice. Ethan took one slow breath and stepped to the front. He looked at the sea of faces, the banners, the glint of sunlight on the council's seats. He looked at Lyra, her eyes full of quiet fear. He looked at Vera, her jaw set like steel, and then he spoke. I choose. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Both of them. The words fell into the air like a thunderclap. For a heartbeat, the crowd didn't move. Then whispers rippled through the square. Faces turned to each other in shock. Gasps and murmurs swelled into shouts. The head counselor's expression froze. That is not an option, he said sharply. You must choose one. Ethan shook his head. I will not decide which sister lives and which dies. You call this a tradition. But it is nothing more than a death sentence for the one I don't choose. I know the truth. I know what happens beyond the gates. The crowd stirred uneasily. Some gasped. Others looked at the council with suspicion. The head counselor's eyes narrowed dangerously. You speak lies, human. You insult our customs. Ethan took a step closer to the railing, his voice carrying across the square. Then let your people see the truth for themselves. He pulled the scroll from his coat and held it high. This is your history. It shows the fate of every unchosen royal. Not exile, not safety, but death. You hide it because you fear what will happen if both of them live. You fear the return of the monarchy. The square erupted. Some shouted for proof, others for justice. A few called for the council to answer. The guards began to move forward, but Vera stepped between Ethan and them. Her sword drawn, Lyra stood beside him. lifting her chin as if to say she would not be taken quietly. The head counselor's voice cut through the chaos. "Seize them." 4 guards rushed forward. Vera met the first with a sharp strike, knocking him back. Ethan grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her away from the balcony. They ran through the side doors, boots echoing against the stone. Behind them, the sound of shouting grew louder. They turned down a narrow hallway, only to find more guards blocking the way. For a moment, it seemed there was no escape. But Vera's eyes flicked to a small service door, half hidden by a tapestry. "This way," she barked, shoving it open. They plunged into a narrow stairwell that spiraled downward. The air was damp, the light dim. Ethan's lungs burned as they ran. He could hear the pounding footsteps above them. The guards were coming fast. Stairs ended in a rusted metal door. Vera kicked it open, revealing the old tunnels beneath the city, once used for moving supplies during the war. Now abandoned, they ran into the darkness, the sound of pursuit fading behind them. When they finally stopped to catch their breath, Ethan leaned against the wall. "That went about as bad as it could have," he said between breaths. Vera smirked faintly. "Actually, you made history. No one has ever defied the choosing like that." Lyra's voice was soft but steady. "The people saw you speak the truth, even. If we don't survive this, they will begin to question the council." Ethan looked at both of them. "We're not done yet. If we can reach the wild lands before they catch us, we might have a chance." Vera's eyes glinted in the dim light. "Then we'd better move fast, because the council won't stop hunting us now." They set off again, their footsteps echoing through the tunnel. Above them, the city roared with the noise of a people on the edge of change. The tunnel stretched on for miles, twisting like the roots of some giant underground tree. Ethan, Lyra, and Vera moved quickly, their breaths sharp in the damp air. Every step echoed, making Ethan feel like the whole world could hear them. The dim light from the old wall lamps flickered, showing rusted pipes and broken tiles. It was clear no one had used these tunnels in years. Vera led the way with the confidence of someone who had memorized every path. "This connects to the outer forest," she said without looking back. "If we reach the ridge, we'll be out of the city's control." Lyra's voice was softer. "They'll expect us to head for the main gates. They won't guess we're going underground." Ethan kept his hand on the small pack he carried. Inside it, the scroll that exposed the council's lies. He knew it was more than just paper. It was their only leverage if they were ever caught again. Behind them, faint sounds echoed, a clanging metal step, a distant shout. The guards had found the tunnel entrance. Vera's pace quickened. "They're coming," she said flatly. They emerged from the tunnel into a hidden cave, its mouth opening to the wild lands beyond. The change in air hit Ethan instantly, cool, sharp, filled with the scent of wet leaves and distant storms. The sky here was darker, heavy with swirling clouds that glowed faintly in green and blue. Far in the distance, thunder rolled like the growl of an enormous beast. They stepped into the forest, tall silver trees rising like pillars into the mist. The ground was uneven, covered in glowing moss and twisting roots. Every sound felt louder here, the crack of a branch, the rush of a nearby stream. Somewhere above, strange bird-like creatures cried out in metallic tones. The first bolt of lightning split the sky. It wasn't the white flash Ethan knew from Earth. This was a crackling streak of violet. The following thunder made the ground shudder. Lyra looked up nervously. "A storm's forming faster than I expected. We need to find shelter." Vera shook her head. "No time. The council will use the storm to drive us into the open." They moved deeper into the forest, rain starting to fall in heavy drops that sizzled on the glowing moss. Ethan's boots slipped on the wet ground, but Vera's grip on his arm kept him steady. They crossed a shallow stream, the cold water biting at their legs. Then, through the curtain of rain, Ethan saw movement, shadows between the trees. "Vera," he called softly. She looked, and her eyes narrowed. "They've sent the hunters." Unlike normal guards, The hunters were trained to track and capture fugitives in the wild. Their armor was darker, built to blend into the forest, even in the storm. Their movements were silent, but Ethan caught glimpses of them closing in from both sides. Vera motioned to Lyra, "Stay between us." She drew her sword, its metal catching flashes of violet lightning. Ethan picked up a thick branch from the ground, not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. The first hunter lunged from the shadows. Vera met him head-on, her blade clashing with his in a burst of sparks. Ethan swung the branch hard into another hunter's side, knocking him into the stream. Lyra clutched the pack to her chest, her eyes scanning the trees for more attackers. A sharp whistle cut through the rain. More hunters appeared, forcing them to retreat toward the ridge. The slope ahead was steep, the rocks slick with water. Vera went first, pulling Lyra after her. Ethan brought up the rear, slipping more than once but refusing to let go of the branch. Halfway up, lightning struck a nearby tree, shattering it into burning fragments. The flash blinded them for a moment. When Ethan's vision cleared, he saw two hunters climbing the slope after him. He kicked one in the chest, sending him tumbling back. The second reached for him, but Vera threw a dagger that lodged in the hunter's shoulder, forcing him to fall. At the top of the ridge, the wind was brutal, carrying sheets of rain that stung like needles. Below them stretched the endless forest. The wild lands where no law of the council reached, but between them and freedom was a narrow cliff path. Slick and dangerous. Ethan hesitated. "One wrong step and we're done," he said. Vera glanced back at the hunters below. "They won't stop. We take the path or we die here," holding Lyra's hand tightly. Ethan followed Vera along the cliff edge. Each step was a test of balance, the rocks shifting under the force of the wind. Lightning flashed again, showing the jagged drop into the churning river far below. They were halfway across when the hunters reached the ridge. Arrows hissed through the rain, one grazing Ethan's arm. Vera spun, blocking another with her sword. "Go," she shouted to Lyra and Ethan. "I'll hold them." Ethan grabbed her arm. "No, we finish this together." With no other choice, they pushed forward as one. The storm screamed around them, the wind nearly tearing them from the path, but step by step, they made it across. When they reached the cover of the next ridge, Vera finally allowed herself a breath. "We're out of the city's reach now," she said, "but that doesn't mean we're safe. The wild lands have their own dangers, and the council won't give up the hunt." Ethan looked at the sisters, soaked, exhausted, but alive. "We made it this far together," he said, "and together is how we'll survive." The storm had passed by morning. The wild lands lay quiet, mist hanging low over the trees. Rainwater dripped from every branch, pooling in the uneven ground. Ethan, Lyra, and Vera had found a small cave to rest in overnight, but they knew it wouldn't be long before the council's forces found them again. Vera stood at the cave entrance, scanning the valley below. "They'll send their best now," she said flatly. "Not just hunters, the elite." Ethan frowned. "Elite?" "They are trained for war," Vera explained. "They know every weapon, every trap, and every way to kill in silence." Lyra's voice was quiet. "They also never stop. Once they are sent, they will follow until their target is dead or captured." Ethan knew there was no running forever. Sooner or later, they would be cornered. So instead of waiting for that to happen, he decided they needed to make their stand on their own terms. They moved deeper into the wild lands, searching for a defensible spot. By midday, they found an abandoned mining site hidden in the cliffs. Old wooden walkways clung to the rocks, and rusted machinery stood like skeletons. "This will work," Vera said. "We can use the terrain to our advantage." Ethan examined the site, already forming a plan. They gathered what they could: loose rocks, broken metal parts, old cables, and wooden planks. With these, they began building traps. Vera set up rope snares between the narrow paths. Ethan rigged heavy beams to drop when a tripline was triggered. Lyra, though not a fighter, used her quick hands to weave camouflage nets from the old mining ropes and vines she found nearby. By the time the sun began to set, the site was ready. Ethan checked the tripwires twice. "This will only work once," he said. "After that, it's just us against them." Vera's hand rested on the hilt of her sword. "That's enough," she replied. "We don't need to win a war. We just need to survive this night." The first sign of the elite came as darkness fell. Shadows moved at the edge of the forest, silent as smoke. They didn't rush in like the regular hunters. They watched, studied the terrain. Ethan felt the hair on his neck rise. "There. Here," he whispered. A sudden metallic click echoed. One of the tripwires had been triggered. A beam swung down from above, smashing into the first attacker and sending him over the cliff edge. The sound broke the silence, and chaos erupted. 3 elites charged the walkway from the left. Vera met them head-on, her sword flashing in the dim light. The narrow path worked to her advantage. Only one could fight her at a time. Ethan heard the clang of blades, the grunt of effort, the sharp cry of pain as one elite fell on the right side. Another stepped into a snare Lyra had helped place. The rope whipped tight around his legs, yanking him into the air. Ethan rushed in, swinging a metal rod into his side before cutting the rope to drop him onto the rocks below. The elites didn't shout or curse. They moved like machines, each motion calculated. One climbed the cliff wall silently, emerging behind Lyra. Ethan saw it at the last second, lunging forward to tackle him. They rolled across the wet ground, fists and elbows striking in quick bursts. Ethan managed to grab a jagged stone and slam it against the attacker's helmet, knocking him unconscious. Vera fought like a storm, her strikes quick and brutal, but the elites pressed her, forcing her back toward a broken railing. One fainted low, another swung high. She ducked, spinning, and her blade caught the second attacker across the chest, sending him staggering. The third elite lunged, but Ethan, breathing hard, slammed into him from the side. Lyra had armed herself with a long shard of metal, holding it tight despite her shaking hands, when another elite rushed from the shadows toward Ethan. She stepped in, driving the shard into his side. The attacker gasped, stumbled, and fell still. Lyra stared at her hands, trembling, but Vera's voice snapped her out of it. "You did what you had to do." The fight dragged on, the air thick with the smell of wet earth and metal. By the time the last elite fell, Ethan's arms felt like lead, and Vera's breathing was ragged. Lyra was pale but steady, her eyes wide and alert. They had survived, but Ethan knew it wasn't the end. More would come, and now the council would be furious. "We can't stay here," Ethan said, wiping sweat from his brow. "They'll send an army next time." Vera nodded. "Then we move before dawn. There's one place even the council won't follow, the canyon beyond the dead forest." Lyra glanced between them. "It's dangerous," she warned. Ethan gave a tired smile. "So is staying here," as they packed what little they had. Ethan looked at the sisters. They had fought side by side, trusted each other with their lives, and he knew something now. It wasn't just about keeping them alive. It was about showing the council, and the whole planet, that tradition could be broken. Asterisk. The journey to the canyon took 2 long days. The dead forest was unlike anything had seen before. No leaves, no animal calls. Only blackened trunks rising from cracked ground. The air was dry and heavy, carrying the faint smell of ash, as if a fire had swept through long ago and never left. They moved carefully. Vera took the lead, her eyes scanning for hidden dangers. Lyra stayed close to Ethan, the pack with the scroll still strapped tightly to her back. Every sound, even the crunch of their footsteps, seemed too loud in the silent wasteland. By the second night, they reached the edge of the canyon. It was a vast split in the earth, the bottom lost in darkness. Across the gap, the land rose again into green hills, the first sign of life after the dead forest. "This is it," Vera said quietly. "If we cross, we'll be beyond the council's reach, but the bridge." Ethan followed her gaze and saw what she meant. The only crossing was an ancient rope bridge, its planks rotting, some missing entirely. The wind here was strong, making the whole structure sway. Before they could decide how to cross, a deep, distant hum rolled across the canyon. Ethan's stomach tightened. It was the sound of engines. They turned and saw them. Not hunters, not elites, but a fleet of the Council's airships rising over the dead forest. "They found us," Lyra whispered. Vera drew her sword. "We can't fight an army," she said, "but we can make sure they never take us alive." Ethan shook his head. "No, we're not dying here." He glanced at the bridge, then at the airships. "We cross, and we make them face the truth in front of their people, all of them." They moved quickly. Vera went first to test each plank, Lyra next, and Ethan last. The bridge swayed violently under their combined weight. Halfway across, the first airship reached the canyon edge, its spotlight cutting through the dark. Shouts echoed. The Council's soldiers were ordering them to stop. Then, a new sound, deep horns from the other side of the canyon. Figures appeared on the far hill, banners fluttering in the wind. When the light caught them, Ethan saw the symbol on their armor, a golden crown surrounded by stars. Lyra gasped. "It's the Queen's Guard." Within moments, the Council's airships slowed. From the largest ship, a smaller craft descended. Sleek and silver, it crossed the canyon and landed near the Queen's Guard. When the hatch opened, a tall figure stepped out, her presence commanding. Her hair shimmered like molten gold, her robe woven with threads of light. The Queen of Xyler. Ethan had only heard her name in whispers. The Council had claimed she was too weak to rule and had taken power in her place. Yet here she was, alive, strong, and very real. The Queen's voice carried over the wind. "Council of Xyler, your choosing ends today." The crowd of soldiers on both sides murmured. Ethan and the sisters reached the far side, and the Queen stepped toward them. She looked at Lyra and Vera for a long moment, her eyes softening. "You are the last of the House of Killyra," she said. "Your parents were loyal to me until the end. The Council lied to our people and tried to erase your bloodline. But today, the truth will be seen." Ethan handed her the scroll. "This has everything," he said. "They can't deny it if you show it to the people." The Queen nodded, raising the scroll high. "This is the record they kept hidden, every choosing, every royal heir sent beyond the gates, not for exile, but for death. These two sisters were meant to be the next victims, until this human defied them." Her words echoed across the canyon. On the Council's airships, soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their weapons, others looked away in shame. Queen's Guard advanced, and the Council's commander finally gave the order to stand down. One by one, the airships turned back toward the city. The people would hear the Queen's speech by nightfall, and the Council's hold would crumble. Later, in the safety of the Queen's encampment, Ethan sat with Lyra and Vera by a low fire. For the first time since arriving on Xyler, there was no rush, no immediate danger. Lyra leaned against her sister, her eyes half closed. Vera was cleaning her blade, though there was a faint, rare smile on her face. The Queen approached. "You risked everything for them," she said to Ethan. "You could have chosen the easy path, but you chose both. Do you know what that means for our people?" Ethan met her gaze. "It means they can start again, together. And maybe your people can build a future without killing half their past." The Queen smiled. "Then you will stay, not as a prisoner, not as a pawn, but as a friend to the throne." Ethan looked at the sisters. "I came here to make one choice. I ended up making a promise instead, and I intend to keep it." Lyra reached for his hand. Vera gave a slow nod of respect, and for the first time since stepping onto this alien world, Ethan felt that maybe, just maybe, they had won something bigger than survival.